Hello, and welcome to another edition of SoCo Chat, a podcast where we hear from county leaders, discuss the latest news, and talk about all things related to our wonderful corner of California known as Sonoma County. I'm your host, Paul Gullickson, Communications Manager for the County of Sonoma, and today we have the great distinction of having with us his 3rd District Supervisor Chris Coursey, who represents about 100,000 people who live in central Santa Rosa, the Roseland and Moorland areas, and East Rohnert Park. But before we get into our conversation with Supervisor Coursey, I want to start with, as always, the trivia question for this week. Our question is this: 2 of the most well-known historic sites in Sonoma County are the Sonoma Mission in the city of Sonoma and Fort Ross, which was established by the Russians along the Sonoma coast north of the Russian River some time ago. Our question is this: which was established first? And for our bonus question, in which years were both of them established? Be the first to call in or email with the correct answer, and you will win one of our limited edition SoCo Chat coffee mugs. Call us at 565-2242 or email us at publicaffairs, one word, at sonoma-county.org. Good luck. Now, let's dive into today's discussion. Supervisor Coursey, thank you for being here.
Glad to be here on this historic day. You said we were going to discuss the latest news.
That is the latest news.
Today is a
historic day.
Historic day.
It is the first time that a former president has been convicted of a felony 34 times over. So that's rather historic.
It is.
Yeah. So that is remarkable. But anyway, we're going to talk about Sonoma County today, and we're going to talk about you. Now, I'm going to give you a little bit of an introduction. Our guest, Supervisor Coursey, was first elected to the board in if I get anything wrong here, you correct me, right? Was first elected in 2020 and was just reelected to a second term in the primary in March. But Coursey has been a familiar name in Sonoma County for decades, first as a reporter and columnist at the Press-Democrat and later as mayor of Santa Rosa. As a journalist, Chris reported on our community as it underwent tremendous changes from the 1980s through the early 2000s, and now as an elected official, he is helping to shape our future as a supervisor himself. Well, congratulations on being reelected to a second term. Let me start with this. As you look back on your first term on the Board of Supervisors, what stood out to you? And were there any surprises that you didn't see coming? I'm sure there were.
Always. I mean, surprise are us around here.
Right, exactly.
But what stood out, I think, primarily is I was elected. I was actually elected a week before the pandemic was declared.
Right.
When things shut down.
Yeah.
That was in March of 2020, and I had 10 months before I took office. So, I spent that 10 months like everybody else did, a lot of time at home, walking around the neighborhoods, that kind of stuff. But when I arrived here at the county center to work, a place where I had covered the Board of Supervisors back in the 80s and 90s, been here many times, more recently than that, when I was mayor, when I was running. I came into this building and it was a ghost town.
Yeah.
And like most offices were at the time. And coming into a new job, any new job at a time like that, I think was a shock to the system.
Yeah.
So it was very unusual, to come in, to be one of 5 people and really the only one here most of the time.
Yeah.
I only live a couple of miles from the office, so I come in almost every day.
Yeah.
And the population of this building has never fully come back.
Right.
So it's a different place than I expected.
And as I recall, once you actually did take your seat, like you said, we were still absent a lot, and the vaccinations were just rolling out, and they were all that chaos at that time.
Yeah.
You were really in the hot seat right from the get-go, right?
It was not what I expected. So you asked about surprises, and I guess when I was elected, I was pretty confident that I knew what Sonoma County government was all about, what being a supervisor was all about. I mean, I didn't know everything. I hadn't ever been in the seat, but I had a pretty good idea. And then, I guess I came in the middle of a disaster. I had been mayor of Santa Rosa during a disaster and in the aftermath of a disaster. And I guess the surprise there was that the disaster that I had known was very different in the one that I was in
Yeah.
here, because people just treated it so differently.
Right.
After the fires, whether you were at the county or the city, everybody was on deck. Everybody was rowing in the same direction. Everybody had a single purpose. With the pandemic, and this was not just our community, it was our American society, and really beyond that in the world, there was not an agreement about what we should be doing.
Right.
There was a lot of dissent and disagreement about, whether it was even a serious situation or not.
Right. Yeah.
And that was a disappointment and a surprise.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, ultimately, the county ended up with one of the highest vaccination rates in the state, I think 8th or 9th. And if you look at it, one of the lowest mortality rates in the nation.
Right.
So that must be a source of pride.
Yes, but it's tough to be in a situation where you feel like you know what the right thing is to do,
Right.
and there is not that consensus about it.
Right. Yeah. And all that aside, there were still impacts. We saw it. We still see what happened to our kids being kept out of schools, and impacts on our families and mental health. And we're still recovering in so many different ways.
Not to mention the more than 500 people who died in Sonoma County.
Right. Yeah.
And I know you're not forgetting that, but
Right.
I just always have to remind, we all have to remind ourselves that this was a serious situation.
Yeah. And we're still recovering in many respects. Well, just to go back to my original question, as you look back on your first term, what do you see as one of your biggest accomplishments that you've in office?
Yeah. It's the things that keep you going in a job like this are accomplishments. A lot of times it's small things, helping a constituent figure out
Right.
something, so, how to get services, how to solve problems, solving problems on a daily basis, working with staff, maybe even launch a new program sometimes. But the issues that are my priorities that I would spend most of my time on are not the kind of issues that lend themselves to overnight success or maybe even one-term success. And that's, the lack of affordable housing in the county, the homeless issues that we have in this county's mental health needs, climate action. None of those things, let me go back. We do make incremental progress on all of those. We're working on those on a daily basis, but we certainly haven't solved any of those 4 issues. I don't see myself spiking the football in any way, certainly not to date, and even over another term. These are problems that, these aren't local problems. We don't have the tools to solve the housing problem in Sonoma County, in
certainly
California, in the Western United States.
Right.
Same with homelessness. Same with the mental health issues that are largely, I can't say that I've had any accomplishments there that I'm going to say, I did this.
Yeah.
I work on this stuff. I'm proud to work on it. And I'm proud of the incremental progress that we can make.
Well, and as a supervisor, you have the capacity to keep these as priorities, to keep bringing them up, right? Not let them get lost in the shuffle, and that in itself is a success. That that you keep making, and we do make progress in the process. And it's not overnight. Sometimes it's incremental, but that's a great opportunity in the position you're in.
And the position that I'm in is rarely a position where you can take credit for getting things done, because it takes, we have 4,000 employees in this county, more than 4,000 employees. all of whom do the real work. You know, we're the policymakers, we're the leaders, but you know, you can't do anything alone.
Yeah. Well, you also know that how easy it is to get caught up in the small things and lose track of the big things. And so that's, well, let's take a step back and talk about your earlier career, if you don't mind. You worked, as I mentioned, as a reporter and columnist at the Press Democrat for 27 years, starting way back in 1980. You left the newspaper in 2007. How do you think that experience working for the newspaper helped prepare you for what you're doing now?
I think it had a big impact,
Mhm.
but I really have to go back even before that, because the attributes of a journalist are, you know, to be aware,
Mhm.
to have a quick grasp of things, to be able to assess a situation, be able to assess a person, be able to assess an issue, and figure out how to know it better
Right.
quickly.
Ask the right question.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think I started learning that at a very early age. I grew up in a military family. I lived in 8 different homes in my first 17 years before
Okay.
I left home. I went to 7 different schools in my 12 years of school. I had to be the kind of person who walks into a room and is able to figure things out,
Right.
for good or bad.
Right.
As a journalist for 27 years in Sonoma County, I think that, you know, that was 27 years of kind of becoming an expert on the community.
Yeah.
You know, whether it was about politics, about institutions, about people, about neighborhoods.
Mhm.
All of those 27 years were spent studying this community.
Mhm.
I don't think there's a better way to prepare for the political job than that, because really what you're doing in this chair as a county supervisor or as a city council person or as mayor is having all these different issues come at you all the time. Every day is different. You're expected to be able to sift through information, find the relevant stuff, figure out know enough about it by the end of the day or the end of the week,
Mhm.
by the end of the meeting, to be able to make a decision that,
Yeah.
that is an informed decision on it.
Yeah.
That's kind of like, except for the writing part,
Yeah.
being a newspaper.
Being on deadline. Yeah. Yeah. Well, I imagine having the community already know you or feel like they know you because of your role as a columnist, that had to help too in your position. That people, I think, probably found you approachable in many respects.
Yeah, a lot of people, when I was a columnist, people felt like they knew me.
Mhm.
I still feel like I'm better known in the community as a columnist than
As a
as a
supervisor.
supervisor or a mayor. You know, true story, I still have people come up and say, I loved the column you wrote the other day.
Yeah.
And, you know, I haven't written a column for the Press Democrat in 10 years at
Yeah.
least.
Right.
So it made a difference. I had my picture in the paper 3 times a week, you know, for years and years. The kind of name recognition that a lot of people spend a lot of money on in politics, I got for free because of the job that I was doing. And it's kind of my secret weapon as far as the political side of things, just to be frank about it.
Yeah.
You know?
After you left the paper, you went to work for Smart, and obviously you're a big public transit person. Then you served as mayor during the wildfires, as we discussed, and led the city through the 15 months of that recovery. What did you learn from that experience that you think has shaped your overall approach to being an elected official?
Yeah, so many things. I guess a couple things I learned was the importance of showing up, of being there, of how even a mayor who has really a ceremonial job, to simplify it, not a lot of power,
Mm-hmm.
but how much people appreciate
You being there.
being there.
Yeah. And hearing them. Yeah.
Going into the evacuation centers the day after the fire, and people wanted information.
Mm-hmm.
We didn't have information. I didn't have information. The information that I got on the morning of the fire was hearing Kent Porter interviewed on KSRO radio, and saying Fountain Grove is gone.
Yeah.
That was the first I knew the extent.
Wow.
And other than that, the rest of the city staff, our police officers, our firefighters, all of the city staff was out trying to save lives and figure out, how to minimize further damage.
Mm-hmm.
They weren't calling me up and giving me numbers and those kind of things. So I was in these evacuation centers, and people wanted information. They wanted to know what was going on. And I couldn't tell them, but I could be there and tell them, I will find out.
Yeah.
You will know as soon as I know. And I still have people come up to me and thank me for being there and telling them nothing.
Right.
But for being there.
Yeah.
So that was one of the important things, just understanding that there's a responsibility that goes with the title, and that is to represent it.
Yeah.
Represent that title. Understand that it's not about you. It's about it's a symbol of something.
Right.
And that's a powerful
And
thing.
being present is such a huge symbol.
Yeah.
I mean, I remember those community meetings where you did provide information about the resources that are available to residents, but there were still unknowns about when and where things were going to happen. And yet people appreciated it. I remember those meetings just being packed over at the high school gym, and
Those were intense.
they were intense.
Intense meetings. The other thing that I go back to is the learning experience with that. And I think I knew this already, but it was driven home by Rob Giordano, the sheriff at the time. And I heard him say, calm is contagious.
Yeah.
And it's the opposite, obviously, is also true.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I saw both sides of that. And I've always tried to be that calm person. I've not always been that way. You may be surprised. It took some maturity to get there, but it's hugely important for people in crisis to see people who are not freaking out about the crisis, even if they obviously don't have control over everything.
Yeah.
Just helping people understand that things are going to be okay.
Yeah. It's important. It sets the tone for everything.
Yeah.
Well, let's I want to get back to the other passionate issue that you have, and that is housing and helping our people in our community. And earlier this month, there was a huge success. The county broke ground on the Tierra de Rosas, a mixed-use project that will create ultimately 175 units of housing in Roseland, and of those 75 will be designed for low-income members of our community. And in addition to that, there's going to be a 1 acre public plaza or food hall right where Motote Park is, and a civic gathering spot. It's going to be a real community hub for an area that's needed it for so time. That project nearly died a year ago. I just want to make this clear. There was an $18 million hole, I think it was, in this project, and it really needed, just for the infrastructure in particular, and you helped chip in some of your district funds to make that happen, and we got some support from legislators to help out bridge that gap, and you guys got it done. And we were out there at the groundbreaking ceremony just a couple of weeks ago. Why is that project so important, you think, for our community?
It's important for the county to keep a promise.
Yeah.
This project, its roots go back more than 10 years.
Yeah.
To when Roseland was not in the city of Santa Rosa, before annexation. The property is still owned by the Community Development Commission, part of the county. It'll be in the city, but this was the county's responsibility. The infrastructure that's going in now, that was $18 million short out of about a $40 million budget,
Right.
is the county's responsibility. If we didn't do that, if we didn't come up with the money for that, this project wasn't going to get done. I didn't make that promise 10 years ago, but the county did. And now I represent that neighborhood. I feel a debt. I feel like I own a debt being that representative of the county. And so I worked hard, but I did not do it all. I want to just call out Michelle Whitman, the director of our Community Development Commission, who came on board and said, we're going to get this done. We worked with the city, to do some value engineering on it to get the costs down. We worked with State Senator Mike McGuire, with Assemblyman Damon Connolly, who came up with
some funds
between them $3 million to go toward this. The Ag and Open Space District put $1 million toward the open space, the park area. The county administrator last year, when we had a very robust budget fund balance, recommended it to the board that we put $7 million, more than $7 million toward it. And as you mentioned, I had some infrastructure funds in my district budget and just pushed that into this too.
Yeah.
So it takes a village. It took a lot of people understanding that a debt was owed, a promise was made.
Yeah.
Roseland historically has been underserved, under-resourced. It was part of the county, surrounded by the city. It was on the track for annexation for 15 years, and the county figured it was going to go into the city.
Mm-hmm.
The city figured it was still in the county, and so a lot of things did not happen. I did not want to see this not happen.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot of goals here: a commitment to Roseland, a commitment for housing, a commitment for low-income housing. And it's hard to find an example of so many agencies and individuals coming together to make this happen.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a real celebration that day. And particularly the 75 low-income housing units. That's a big chunk right there. And I know we've got a lot more work to do, but do you feel like we're on the right track? I mean, how do we do more of these going forward?
With blood, sweat, and tears.
Just one project at a time. Huh?
It's tough because the county doesn't do a lot of multifamily housing.
Mm-hmm.
We don't build housing at all.
Right.
The county doesn't build housing. The city doesn't build housing. Developers build housing. Builders build housing. And usually it's nonprofit builders and developers who do affordable housing,
right.
Legally affordable housing. That's where my interest goes. Most of that's going to happen in the 9 cities of Sonoma County.
Mm-hmm.
That we are of the ethic that supports city-centered growth.
Right.
So we just finished a housing element for our general plan where we have between 3,000 and 4,000 units that are planned for in the
identified,
county, in the unincorporated county. Whether those happen or not depends on
developer
interest, funding,
incentives of some kind.
Any kind of affordable housing needs some funding.
Yeah.
So there are supports for that, but it's very competitive. We've got a potential for a Bay Area-wide housing bond on the ballot.
That's going to be huge
this year. And if that comes about, it could mean, depending on what the actual ballot measure says, either $10 billion or $20 billion toward affordable housing in the Bay Area, in all the counties. And we could put that money to work in Sonoma County. It would make a difference.
Yeah, and make a difference everywhere. It would really help the whole state,
Absolutely.
or at least the Northern California, areas. You can often gain insights into people from the things they hang on their walls. And there are two things that dominate the walls in your office I want to just call attention to for our listeners. One is a large map of the 3rd district, your district. The other is a giant black and white photo of the face of a local farm worker. Why do you choose these two for your walls?
Well, both of those remind me who I work for.
Okay.
And they're not the only things on my walls.
Mm-hmm.
The map, obviously, I love maps. I refer to that map all the time.
Yeah.
And the district was new to me when I got redistricted.
Right. Yeah.
So I needed a map
soon
to find my
after
way
you
around.
started. Yeah.
The photograph, the very large, oversized portrait of a man named Maximino, is a photo by Eric Castro, who is a great local photographer here.
Yes.
He did a series of portraits of farm workers at the end of their workday, sweaty, tired, dirty. The picture of Maximino is full on face, and he's taking a drag of a cigarette.
Mm.
It startles people when they walk into my office, but it reminds me of the people that need government to keep an eye out for them.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It's a black and white photo. I have on my opposite wall a black and white photo that I took of the gates of Yosemite with El Capitan and Bridalveil Falls and Half Dome in the distance to remind me about the planet, about taking care of this rock we call home. And then I have pictures of my family around, and a picture that I love of my dad and his brother and my uncle sitting on the hood of this fancy car, and their mom and my grandparents, their mom and dad also, and their grandparents look like Bonnie and Clyde. My grandpa Jay has his overalls on and flat
The
cap,
fedora hat. Yeah.
and Nanny has on her a house dress. This is obviously not their car.
Right.
They were not fancy people, but it's a fancy car, and the kids are propped
Clinging.
up, sitting on the hood.
Love it.
Yeah.
Those are classics.
So just reminders of why I do what I do.
Yeah. Well, those are lovely moments and lovely photos. It's for to decorate your office. Well, Supervisor, we haven't really scratched the surface on so many things we want to talk about. We're going to have to invite you back. We want to talk about transit. We want to talk about your advocacy for bike paths and bicycling. We know you're a big advocate of that. So, and so many other things that are coming up. But our final question is this: whether it's we often ask this of our guests, but if it's a hiking trail, a restaurant, or someplace, where is it your go-to place in Sonoma County where you want to have some time away and just appreciate most where we live?
I can get on my bike in my garage and pedal for 10 minutes and be in the countryside.
That's a great thing.
People come from around the world to ride bikes here. They come here to taste wine. They come here to relax and see the redwoods and the coast and all of that.
Mm-hmm.
There's no one place, but I just feel really lucky, and I think most of us do who live in this place, to be able to, have a job, be able to raise a family, have a roof over our heads, and enjoy all of the great surroundings that we live in.
Yeah.
I'm also, every time I think about it, I'm reminded of all the people who don't have that privilege, who live in this same place but live a very different life than we do.
Yeah.
And so I don't mean to end on a down note, but that's what I'm doing here.
Yeah.
That's why I'm doing this work at almost 70 years old now.
Yeah.
So
To raise the quality of life for everybody.
yeah.
Yeah. So, well, very well said. Thank you. And thank you for being with us, Supervisor Coursey. And as a thank you, we'd like to give you one of our SoCo Chat coffee mugs to raise the quality of your life and whatever else you decide to put in there. And
There you go.
And we also would like to give our audience a chance to get a mug of their own. And if you can answer this week's trivia question, you can be entered into a drawing to win our mug. Our question this week is this. Two of the most well-known historic sites in Sonoma County are the Sonoma Mission in the city of Santa Rosa and Fort Ross, which was established by the Russians just north of the Russian River. Our question is this. Which was established first? And for our bonus question, in what years were each of those historic landmarks established? If you know, call or email us with the correct answer, and you will win one of our limited edition SoCo Chat coffee mugs. Call us at 565-2242 or email us at publicaffairs@sonoma-county.org. Be sure to include your name and phone number so we can get back to you and let you know if you've won. Also, if you have comments about this or any of our other segment or a suggestion for a topic for a future SoCo Chat discussion, please email us at that same address, which is publicaffairs@sonoma-county.org. But yeah, thank you all. We hope you continue to follow us on Spotify, Apple Music, Amazon, and of course, YouTube. And we'll see you next time. Thank you, Supervisor Coursey.
Thank you. My pleasure.